Chat, welcome. No intro today, as once again we are forced into the front lines of science communication. Who am I? I'm award-winning science educator and Thor if you really squint and rub some Vaseline on your eyeballs directly, Kyle Hill. For the next hour, I would like to go through with you a hot button issue, at least in the United States, the train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio. Why are we doing this today? Why are we doing this again on the Facility channel? Well, last time a lot of people found it very useful, and since there is now more information out there, this is a great time to counter or at least explain the event as best we can. Counter misinformation. I see a lot of misinformation out there. I see people saying that this is a mini Chernobyl. It's not. People saying that this is the worst environmental disaster in American history. It's definitely not. But I don't want you to believe just what I say. That's the title of this stream, Doing Your Own Research. We'll be doing our own research today. I will show you how to do it. As an informed citizen, don't believe me. Believe the data, believe the instruments, and then we will put that data in context to answer a lot of questions that I know you have and that the public at large has. Is it safe? Is it safe right now? Is the drinking water safe? Are there long-term effects on my health from even small chronic amounts? Those are things we can do today. I spent all morning doing the calculations, because of course I did, but we will do them together, and hopefully by the end of this, you will feel at least empowered enough to do something similar, or hopefully you'll have some sort of more informed idea of what is going on there, because it is such a hot button issue, like I said. Of course, if you want to continue on this conversation, we here at the facility have our own lovely little community that's behind blast doors, patreon.com/Kyle Hill. Hey, we do videos like this. We do main videos, mini documentaries about nuclear disasters. We even play video games sometimes. If I'm feeling good enough after today's stream, we might play some video games later on, but that is for another time. Chat, today, if you maintain your civility and you're calm, cool, and collected, I promise we will get through anything that you want to get through. Addison Conca with the 5, my first time catching you live, and it's because I'm in isolation due to COVID. Worth it. Well, I don't know about that, Addison, but I hope you get better as soon as humanly possible. Bacon Dave with the 10. I like that. I like that name. Sounds like a good barbecue restaurant. Oh, snap. This is the first stream of yours I've caught. Hope you are doing well, safe. Topic is wild. There have been 3 major accidents in Ohio this month alone. I think some of that is confirmation bias. You know, when you say you're driving and you see a police car and you're like, oh, I don't remember seeing a police car ever on this road, and then you see 3 more that same day. I think that's part of it. But it definitely is alarming when you're not thinking about it too much. Chef, one of my most contributive professors at the facility, simping for accurate information and clear science communication and education. That's what we're going to do today. Chat, let's get right into it, because I know there's a lot of, when I talk about controversial things like this, there's a lot of people who aren't in the main audience, and that is fine. Who the heck is this guy? We can get into it. SNDN with the 5. Thank you. Let's do it. I timed that almost perfectly with the music. Did you see that? So, yeah, a lot of first-time streamers, stream watchers. I appreciate that. And this will be much less silly today. This will be much more explanatory, expository. So if you're doing super chats or you're tagging me, for the next little bit, I'm going to be focusing on trying to deliver my best representation of the situation to you. So I may not see everything, I may not get everything, but it all goes towards our mission of education. That looks like an atom bomb, says Matt. Why does it look like an atom bomb, Matt? Do you know why mushroom clouds kind of take up that form, or clouds take up that form when there's a large plume of something? It's because that plume will rise according to density until the density is equal. And once the density is equal, there is no differential pressure, no differential density to make it move in one way or another. So it doesn't move up or down, it moves out. Jules, thank you for the 10. Daniel, thank you for the 10. So when it gets to the same density in the air, it moves out. That's why the cloud does this. It's not a sinister cloud in the sense that this makes it more dangerous. It's just that's how air density works. So earlier this month, trains carrying materials, chemicals that we need to make everyday things like PVC pipes, vinyl chloride is the VC in PVC, polyvinyl chloride, derailed near the town of East Palestine, Ohio. The town has about 5,000 people in it, and because of images like this, initially it wasn't being reported on. People were very confused why it wasn't being reported on, and then when it started to be reported on, people took it as this is the worst environmental thing that's happened this decade or ever. And so a firestorm of another sort started. We covered it last week, and I tried to put some context there, and we'll do that again now. So about 20 days after the initial incident is where we sit. So there was initially a fire, and then there was a larger fire, an intentional one, that was set to burn off the chemicals that had spilled from these 2 dozen train cars. Why would you do that? Why would you produce a plume of chemicals like this? The reason why is that fearing an explosion, which would have distributed known toxic materials over a much larger area, you burn off those chemicals so that the combustion process chemically changes those chemicals into something else, something more manageable or something less dangerous. Otherwise, they wouldn't have done it. So it's in fact a safety practice that made this very scary cloud. Is it good? No. Would you want this? Do you want this? No. But it is making the best of a bad situation. The next question I actually had was, why is the drinking water possibly being affected, or streams being affected, killing fish, or having detectable levels of chemicals? Well, I didn't know until I actually looked at the pictures, is that you see in the top left corner there, the trains unfortunately derailed directly next to a small lake and streams. Now, I didn't know that. I I had it in my head that it was seeping into the groundwater or something like that, but that's not, in fact, what happened. The trails unfortunately derailed right next to the lake, and that is why they were detecting um, levels in the water. Beyond that, people started noticing that the water had a shiny film on it, or when the water was disturbed, you would see some chemical trace. And this further got promoted by social media. This further added to the evidence that this is some sort of conspiracy or grand disaster, etc., etc. But we can't make sense of images like this. The gases are now poisoning the lake, says What's Up Blocks. But are they? That's why you have to look at the data yourself. Now, I say that, it sounds like heresy, but what I'm trying to sound like is a scientist. You can smell a chemical below its dangerous level. You can also see chemicals below their dangerous levels. So right now, the EPA has the train company committed to remediation, long-term remediation, fining them up to $70,000 a day if they don't clean it up. And that's good. And they're going to extreme levels, saying, oh, we don't even want to smell the chemical anymore, which of course you don't. But why I'm saying you can smell and see something when it's not in fact dangerous is because there are odor thresholds and visible thresholds. What is the LD50 of the chemical, says Granberg. We'll get there. But you're still ingesting the chemicals, says Eric Schubert. But everything has a dose-response curve in the human body. So, like a scientist, you say, just because you can see it and just because you can smell it doesn't mean it's dangerous to you in that situation. For example, you smell, you can immediately smell when there's a gas leak in your home, but you won't immediately pass out. See what I'm saying? So even though, and again, I know this is a pain point for the public when I say, if you see this, it doesn't mean it's dangerous, but it really does. It doesn't necessarily follow, because we have to check what the concentration here is. If that water was all that chemical, then yeah. But if this is a thin trace sheen, then even if you're ingesting the chemical, even if the chemical goes into the human body, we have known dose response rates for these chemicals based on animal models, and you'll be able to tell long term if there will be health effects. There's a difference between acute exposure, chronic exposure. And you see right afterwards, the EPA putting more water into the streams to dilute the concentration of chemicals. So the entire point of this episode, though, is not to just give you those statements. It is to prove to you that that seeing a chemical, smelling a chemical, can be uncoupled from levels that are dangerous to humans or not. We have to check, don't we? Right. So how do you check? Well, if I were doing this, which I am right now, and we will do in real time, I would go to the data from the people who have been there since day one, and that just happens to be the EPA. So we go to the EPA. I like this little thing that they added up here. This is an official website. How do you know? Well, because of, the TTS lock and all that. Nice little touch. But and I know some of you might be like, but that's the government. Okay. But they have reams of freely available data from the site almost every day. Okay. And I got to give it to the EPA here in that when I first went to this website about 2 weeks ago or a week ago, they didn't have what they now have, which is something pretty incredible. I've never seen this on a government website before. You want to look at the data yourself? You want to explore the sampling data for water, air, sediment? Let's do so. And I've never seen this level of involvement on a government website. So what we have here is you can the entire data set. You can see the lab results above my head here. What was the result? What is the reporting limit? Which is what does it go above that limit? And does it, in this case, no, that chemical, dichloroethane, was not found in a limit that is reportable. Something that you'd want to say, okay, look out. They have the date. You can also select sample by sample location, and you can select the chemical you're looking for, and you can select the monitoring device itself, which it's frankly an impressive amount of customization here. So if I was looking at this sample, which is an air sample, I click on this. It tells me where specifically it was measured down to the street in East Palestine. Thanks, Bacon Dave. Appreciate you. So, as a trying to be an informed citizen, and you have questions about what's going on in Ohio, you have a website that is giving you far more than it usually does. So what do you do? How do you do your own research in this situation? Well, first of all, we have to know what we're looking for. Before we start here, you have to trust a little in the government, says Fade 4K. Well, I mean, it's how society functions. We have to know what we're looking for. So I know that the public is up in arms about one of the most concerning chemicals, which is vinyl chloride. So what I will do, since I have a science background, but this won't be too hard for the average person, I will look up the latest published research on the toxicological profiles for vinyl chloride of the same sort we are looking for, which is published just a month ago. Now, what am I looking for in this case? I am looking for what chemists call Lowell, the lowest observed adverse effect level, or NOEL sometimes, which is no observed adverse effect level. They're very closely related. This report is toxic. You're hilarious. So inside this report, I know what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the lowest concentration of vinyl chloride that has an adverse effect. Now, that adverse effect could be things like you're hearing about in the news, liver damage, possible carcinogenicity. But I have to know where that effect starts. Once I know Lowell or NOEL, then I can compare that to the actual data that is being sampled in East Palestine, which has dozens, look at this, I'm scrolling the entire time, dozens and dozens and dozens of individual samples across dozens of different chemicals. And then I can compare that. And a little bit later, we have to do a little bit of math to convert units here, but that's directly what we're doing. So we're doing our own research here. No one is directing us. No one is guiding us. Who sponsored the research? Well, this is the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry. This is one of those standard reports that is produced for a chemical that is used widely throughout the country. They have reports like this on every chemical. And you'll note this was before the train derailment, et cetera, et cetera. So it's very hard to kind of link what you're trying to link there. Like, well, who did it? No connection between the two. Now, I've already looked at this report. But if you were looking at this report for the first time, what do I want to know? I want to know health effects. But before that, in a scientific report, usually usually they have an executive summary right at the top that will give all of the major stuff for people like me or people like me who are maybe not the technical science types. I don't know why I did that, why I clicked on it. So I will go right to a summary, and then the rest of the report will have all the data in explicit detail. Is concentration the only variable to worry about here? Does exposure over time make a difference, or is it accounted for in the previous measurements as gray with the 10? We will get to that. Specifically, exposure orally over time, if you were to drink something contaminated with this or eat something contaminated with this, has a time value. So yes, you are correct, but we'll get to that. Okay. So for a general description of this research, we go to minimal risk levels. Relevance to public health for vinyl chloride. We can have the overview, what it generally does, summary of health effects, which will say what you've seen, reported, possible liver damage, carcinogenicity, as I already said, but what is the minimum level at which that happens? Because, like I said, even water can be toxic at the right concentration. So we need to know specifically the concentration. If you take the unscientific approach to say, well, any detection of any of these chemicals is a disaster, then I have bad news for you. Everything in your life is going to be too toxic for you. Chemicals are everywhere. It's just how we live, but it's the dose that makes the poison, and so we measure the minimal risk effects. So let us go to, I think it was like 21 here. Bam. Minimal risk levels for vinyl chloride. So we're going to look at the stuff in bold. So inhalation exposure, this is breathing it. This is the gas that people were worried about. This is oral exposure, which is it getting into the water, which is what people worry about. And you see, as one chatter pointed out, it has a time component. Parts per million is measuring how much of the stuff is in some volume of the stuff, like a gas. People getting rashes, massive animals dying, says Josh R. I believe most of that is coincidence, at least for non-aquatic organisms. And you'll see why in a second. Okay. So inhalation exposure, acute is what we're looking for because the gases have now, well, we'll get to that. But intermediate and acute, we're looking for, this would be the worst, 0.5 parts per million. Okay? So, we have our first thing that we're looking for. We are looking, so I'm going to select vinyl chloride. I'm going to then select, oh, you can't see this. Select all data that shows above a reporting limit. So all data that's like, yes, we found something. Notice that I can scroll through that in 1/10 of the time, meaning that there's far fewer of those reports showing that they found something above an actionable level. But let's go, since these are all dated, let's take the most recent of one of them, the 16th, which is just a couple of days ago. And it was reported right here, right on Main Street. And the result was 0.48 micrograms per cubic meter. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to one of my favorite websites, and I'm going to go to Wolfram Alpha, and I'm going to put in our limit of 0.5 parts per million. Now, there's a really easy conversion rate from micrograms per cubic meter, because metric is better, to parts per million, and I know that. So what was that? That was 0.48. So we go 0.48, and then we're going to divide that by 1,000 to get parts per million. Now, as Wolfram Alpha is pointing out, it already knows the punchline to this. which is the level at which you inhale vinyl chloride, and it is acutely bad for you. You would develop something like some people are complaining about, some of these health issues. The level that it's being detected at is over 1,000 times smaller than the lowest dose we've ever observed bad things happen. Okay. So what this is saying right now, today, or not today, but just a couple of days ago, as gases diffuse into the atmosphere, the level at this site is 1,000 times less than anything dangerous. 3 orders of magnitude. But of course, maybe I'm being selective. Maybe I'm cherry picking. Well, let's keep our results anything above the detection limit for the machines. And here we go. Here's this was right after the train car was burning. This might be right when they ignited them. But look at that, 16 micrograms, not 0.4. So we go back, 16 micrograms. And we still, on the day of the disaster, and let's see where this was. Boop. On the day of the disaster, right through the middle of town, one of these recording sites here, even right after the disaster, the level was 31 times lower than something that would harm you acutely. Which is to say, it wouldn't. Let's continue. This is, since I've selected everything for vinyl chloride above the detection limit for the machines, everything yes, there's only a few of these. Is there anything that's beyond that? 1.8, 4.7, 11, 0.2, 1.2, 1, 7.7, 6, 4, 1, 1.4, 10, 16.48. So, for this, for the summary of the air sampling data for the vinyl chloride gas coming from this train derailment, it is between 30 times and 1,000 times less than the lowest observed adverse effect level. That would enable a scientist like me to tell a government official or a mayor or saying like, the levels are not of concern currently to public health based on the studies we have done. Now, I think you can have an appreciation for that conclusion when it's air. Air goes up, it disperses, it rapidly loses that concentration. But what about 0.4 was acute on the research paper? Yes, but you're forgetting that Beatmaster, we're converting units here. This is 0.5 ppm. I cannot convert, this 16 is not ppm. So I had to divide by 1,000. This is why knowing your science and your mathematics is critically important, especially your units. Or else I would get a wildly different result and say, there's a cloud of death heading for you, when there is most certainly not. Now, like I said, you can probably appreciate this, that these few, tens of thousands of gallons, if it was gas, even if it was a lot, it would quickly diffuse, that concentration would go way down. But what about what is in the water, right? What about those images? We see a sheen and we can still smell the chemical. Are those levels indicative of, quote, the worst ecological disaster in American history? Well, we go back to our table. We go to chronic oral exposure, which is what most people living in East Palestine are worried about. I've seen quotes saying, well, what about 20 years from now? And I continue to drink this water. What's going to happen to my liver? Let's answer that question with data. Chronic oral exposure. in milligrams per kilograms per day. Now, what does that mean? That is a dose. So milligrams per kilogram. Like I said, it really matters what the concentration is, because for ingestion specifically, like taking a literal poison, it actually depends on how big the thing is, the creature. So it's per kilogram. An amount of arsenic that would kill a mouse, for example, wouldn't kill you. That's a bad example. I don't know the LD50 for arsenic. But there is a relationship that directly correlates inversely with mass. The larger you are, the more of the stuff it takes to be toxic. Oh yeah, sure. You're right. That's Matt Hawley. That's micrograms, not milligrams. I don't know why I said that. So 3 micrograms per kilogram per day. 3 millionths of a gram. So what is this saying? This is saying that you will get chronic exposure and possibly health effects from ingesting vinyl chloride, like is in the water in East Palestine, if there are 3 millionths of a gram in what you're drinking for every kilogram that you weigh, and you have that every day. Okay? Now, I know that's kind of complicated, but the units will work out. So what we're looking for is 3 micrograms per kilogram per day. Okay? So we go back to our vinyl chloride. We change, actually, first. We change to the water sampling data. Some of these are just wide panel stuff, not stuff we're actually expecting to find. So let's go to vinyl chloride. Let's go to everything that was above the reporting limit for the machines. Boop. As you can see again, I just want you to observe a difference here, which is notable. That if I say, what is everything under... Oh, I'm clicking on the wrong thing. What is everything under the limit? You scroll for a little while. What is everything over the limit? You scroll for a lot less. But we have to check. So let's go for a date very close to the... And notice here that we have Palestine, East Palestine being measured. We also have the downstreams, and they even show the path of the streams on this. It's a good data set. They're probably getting it from GIS. But downstream all the way to the Ohio River, which is also what some people are caring about, and so they measure all the way down. So let's look at above the reporting limit here, and let's find something from right after the disaster that looks scary. Here we go. Here's one. Measured right outside of East Palestine, right near, where was that? Right there. Right in the Sulphur Run Creek, which you're hearing about on the news. Absolute zero. Thank you for the 20. I live in Australia and you were covering the orphan source. Well, happy I could be of some service, mate. So, we're looking at Sulphur Run. People are concerned about it. And on the 8th, right after the burn, we have a result of 220 micrograms per liter. Oh, sorry, 2,200 micrograms per liter, and the reporting limit was just 100. So way over what the machine was initially looking for. Okay? So now what do we do? Well, now we go back to our good friend, Wolfram Alpha. We know what we are looking for is 3 micrograms, okay? 3 micrograms per kilogram of your body weight per day is what would be dangerous to you. That is, if you are drinking that amount per day. It's not a discount Australian accent. It's pretty good. Now, how do we tell if that's dangerous? Well, what I like to do, which is what we did previously, is divide that by a value that someone would get from ingesting some amount of what is being measured here. Okay. So let's make some reasonable assumptions to find the worst case scenario. This is 220 micrograms per liter, 2,200 micrograms per liter, rather, per liter, I can do this, times how much, the basic amount of what you will drink per day, if you drink a lot of water per day, is about 3 liters. That's a good amount of water to drink, 8 glasses a day, yada, yada, yada. So I'm going to say that, let's say that the average body mass of a person on the planet, which includes children and everyone else, I know some of you are going to be mad about this, but 72 kilograms. I know, but it includes children, so we have to be inclusive here. So what we are saying, liters per day. You're drinking 3 liters per day. So this is the toxicity level. 3 micrograms per kilogram of your body weight every day. That would lead to a long-term exposure from drinking the water around this contaminated area that may produce health effects. It is the lowest observed adverse effect level. It's the Lowell. Here is a high level measured right inside the creek. You drink about 3 liters a day. Then let's say you weigh on average 72 kilograms. Now, this is if you are drinking directly from the contaminated area, okay? Like, a smart person wouldn't do that, This is the most contaminated area, and you'd be drinking all of your water all day from it. So this is worst case scenario, right? Let's see what Wolfram Alpha says. So that, I think we'll show this better if we do it the other way around. So now we have an opposite data point, don't we? Oh, you guys can't see that. Boop. Boop. 30. And that means because the exposure level is on top and we're dividing by what our limit is, that means if it's bigger than 1, it exceeds our safety level. And in this case, it exceeds it by 30 times. That's bad. That's bad. Now, this would be dangerous. If you drank this concentration of vinyl chloride from a river every day for an extended chronic period of time, you could probably see health effects from liver damage, possible carcinogenicity, etc., etc. However, the environment is not a static system. Neither are the remedial efforts that will be going into cleaning this area of the river. Over time, the chemical will dilute and could be diluted further by additional water or cleaned up actively by people from the EPA. So, what I'm saying, and some of you thought I was just going to say everything's hunky-dory. No, directly after the tankers were spilling directly into the creek, if you drank from that creek every day, you would probably see health effects. But like I said, how quickly will this go away? Is it going to be a chronic thing? Are our wells going to be poisoned for 20 years? A disaster like Chernobyl, something like that. Well, we go back. I picked a data point to have the worst case scenario. Right off the spill site. Right after the burning. What about something just a few days afterwards? So that's the 8th. We know the environment isn't a static system. Let's go. Is there anything further than the 10th? So let's go to the 8th. The 10th. 2 days afterwards. just downstream of the previous location. Let's go to the 8th. Let's put this result, 3.9. And again, just for convenience, I'm going to flip this equation so you can see how many times more or less this is. And so within 2 days, directly downstream, the vinyl chloride in the water diluted to the point where you could drink from that creek 3 liters a day. You could get every single glass of water from that area of the creek every day, and you would be consuming water that is 20 times under the lowest observable adverse effect limit. Again, if I was a scientist advising a public official, I would say at that point, knowing that is 20 times under the lowest thing that we're looking for, and knowing that remedial efforts will continue and that the water will continue to dilute, this is in fact safe to drink. Now again, that sounds... I know social media doesn't like statements like that. But all I'm doing is the data. I'm just doing the math with freely available data. Why don't you go drink it, Kyle? I would. Seems to me that 30 times the chronic dose just once might be enough to be an acute dose, and a lot of wildlife doesn't have much choice, says John Van Sickle with the 10. Well, that would explain the roughly 3,500 fish who died in the creek more or less immediately. Keep in mind, fish are a lot fewer kilograms than us. And they have biological susceptibilities that are different than us. And so it's entirely plausible that when the level was around this, that it could have killed off a number of fish very quickly. Given that, on average, they're, 70 times smaller in body weight? 44,000 dead animals in the area, says Wyatt. I haven't seen any confirmed reports of that. I haven't seen, there are no confirmed reports of direct deaths of non-aquatic organisms in the area. I know people were talking about their foxes and their chickens, but I haven't seen any toxicology reports from them to rule out randomness. Okay. It wasn't just the chloride, though, says Mason Edwinson. This applies roughly across the board. Unfortunately, in real time, since I've already been talking for 45 minutes, I did this research beforehand on the other chemicals. I focused on the vinyl chloride, which is the one everyone is concerned about, but I would have to go through the process of, I'd have to find this report for every single chemical and then do the math for you in real time, which I unfortunately don't have the time to do at the moment. But the whole point of this was that you can do this. You can do this exact same thing if you don't believe me. Freely available data, more data than you would even expect of a situation like this, especially if there was a cover-up or something like that, which it does not seem to be. All the different samples, all the different chemicals, all the different machines, all the different lab results freely available, and then we try to corroborate this with outside evidence. So you go to something like a outside laboratory. This one is Cardinal Environmental Laboratories from Ohio, not from East Palestine. They come to the village of East Palestine here. They take samples, and what they're looking for are all these different chemicals: methane, toluene, vinyl chloride, etc., etc. You have it signed off on. You have a detection limit, etc., etc. And what they have found in outside research, for all of these chemicals, is BDL. What does BDL mean? Below detectable level. Which corroborates the same lack of actionable findings from the EPA data that we were just going through. And Kyle Tapper just had his message deleted because you're trying to claim that I'm some sort of paid actor or something like that, saying that why are you siding with the rail companies who have destroyed people's homes? They haven't. How so? That's confusing to me. This is the only look. I know some of you in chat vehemently disagree with me using data like this, or even going to a government website. Oh, scientists who spend literally their entire lives working for a bad salary for the public good. Oh. And I know some of you will immediately have that knee-jerk reaction, but this is literally the only way forward in our argument. And this isn't coming from the rail company. This is coming from the EPA, who is fining the rail company $70,000 a day. Okay? So if we have a disagreement on their homes were destroyed and they're going to be poisoned forever, how do we proceed forward? Okay, let's look at the levels of the poison and see if they're going to hurt people forever. And as I just spent 45 minutes going through step by step, it doesn't seem like it would or will, based on the studies that we have, which, these toxicology reports pull from studies that have been done over decades. It's not just a single person or a single source or a single point in time. Chat, I think this is how you do your own research. Marty Tube says, who's going to want to buy property there? That's why I do things like this, Marty. Is because, to me, if the public is more aware of the actual hazard of an area, a technology, something like nuclear power, then you don't have fear or misinformation outstripping facts, right? Who wants a nuclear power plant in their backyard? I mean, I do, because I want to look at the cooling towers all day and think about, trees and stuff. But because of the misinformation and misunderstanding about nuclear power and its dangers, people don't want it. So saying, who's going to want to buy property there is not correlated with what data actually says, right? I agree. And these people in East Palestine, none of them are going to watch this, and none of them are going to believe me, I bet. But this is the only way forward that I know how to do, if you're asking about toxicity. Bacon Dave with the 5. Thanks for all your support today, Dave. What everyone needs to understand is that Kyle's not saying calm down, the rail companies aren't the bad guy. I'm saying the danger is at this level. Exactly. I said, notice, chat, and this is super important. I didn't say anything about the culpability of the train company. They were deregulated. There was an accident with the wheels. It crashed. I haven't said anything about their response. I haven't said anything about what they're doing or not, or what they're paying or not. I've literally only said some person like me took out a detector out to the river, sampled it, brought it back to a lab, and this is what it says. That's all I've done. The solution to pollution is dilution, except for maybe stuff that bioaccumulates like lead, but VC seems to break down, says Karagoth. Indeed, chemicals like vinyl chloride break down in a couple of days in the sun. Another reason why this could never be considered something like a Chernobyl, with cesium-137 hanging out for 30 years in the topsoil. Very different situation. Could the chemicals have mixed and created something else, says Jeff Lane with the 25? I don't know. They were already measuring, after burning the gases off, they were already measuring for different chemical products, all, again, below actionable levels, like phosgene, etc. I've asked a few times, so this incident isn't spilling chemicals over time. The half-lives of them in the environment and atmosphere and water conditions could be an important point. Yes, complete mental, but as I just said, stuff like vinyl chloride decays in a matter of days. This, in fact, would be more dangerous if it was a consistent source of chemical, right? If this was an unlimited supply of vinyl chloride constantly leaking into the stream, this would be bad. But it would be worse. But it's a finite amount of chemical. So you can clean it all up. Or to the point where it is below actionable levels. Majorly awesome. Haven't seen you in a while, buddy. With the 15... Hey, Kyle, love the science. I was just about to raise concerns about the truthfulness of the info, but you beat me to it. Here's 15 towards fixing that light, or the top secret hair care formula. You're never getting that. No one can get it. It's held by 2 people who are never allowed to be on the same plane at once in case it crashes. Thanks for keeping us informed, Kyle. First stream I caught live. Candy, I'm at work, so take my money and thank you again, says Kreklo with the 5. Appreciate it. And everyone who disagrees with me in chat may think, this is suspicious. But chat, what we are doing, unbiased, unpassionate. I am not paid by any train companies. How would that work? Plus, I wouldn't accept it because it'd be, conflict of interest and all that. I fight misinformation professionally. You just say the fault's on the rail companies up front or people won't hear the true things you are saying, says Sam. That's a good point. I mean, I probably, knowing that those 2 things are linked in the public's mind, I probably should have led with, condemnation of company practices. You're right. But I didn't want to say anything either way. The Grimace with the 5. Hey, Kyle, Big Rail CEO here. Your payment is in the mail. Do you accept via pics of sexy chrome robot ladies? JK, thank you for the lesson, sir. This whole tragedy is just horrible, says Mr. Moon Squirrel, Mr. Moo and this Moon Squirrel too. I would not call it a tragedy. Nobody died. Nobody is expected to die, given all of the concentration data that we just spent the last hour going through. Much like other disasters, like 3 Mile Island, there will be consequences, there will be health effects, but those health effects will be from stress and from having to uproot your life for a couple days, take your kids out of school, being worried about getting pregnant, all of those things that tack on to the toll, the human toll of a disaster. I would never argue those aren't real. But I would say that they're not from the chemicals themselves. What would it take to clean this up, Kyle? Would this be the decade-long ongoing cleanup repair like Flint, Michigan, or would it take months to clean up the wrecks, as Michael Lesberg with the 10? The cleanup will be far easier here. Because it just spilled. You can dilute the water, you can filter the water, and the soil, the air you can't do anything about. It will just dilute into the atmosphere to the point of nothingness. But for the soil, you literally just take up the soil. You suck up everything liquid on the ground, and then you remove the topsoil to an acceptable extent, a couple inches down, a foot down, whatever it is, in that one area. And I should mention that they already cordon off the site completely with trenches, etc., so that no chemicals were leaking into the stream for many days now. It's effectively cut off. So similar to nuclear site remediation, you take the topsoil, you ship it somewhere else. You take the water, you ship it somewhere else. Where it doesn't pose a public health threat to humans. And I'd argue that it doesn't right now anyway. Hey, Kyle, actually doing an essay about your Chernobyl series in my college English class, says Ethan Meeker with a 10. Ethan, I'm honored and humbled. We'll have a new Half-Life Histories, I think, before the end of the month. It is about one of the more famous orphan source accidents. And I think it's going to be good. John Dallas with the 999. I'm from Ohio, and I can't say how amazing it is to see you getting these facts out here. I've seen so much unscientific conspiracy thinking online, and it's just discouraging. This is John Dallas with the 10. Like I said, I do not fault anyone from East Palestine for having a knee-jerk reaction to what I'm saying. I get it. I mean, look at me. You know. But they could have done exactly what I just... They could still do exactly what I just did. Better yet, I mean, if I was in East Palestine, me being a science boy, I'd make a video. I'd go up to... I'd contact the EPA. I'd ask them for one of their machines. I'd follow somebody on site. Hey, Kyle, you do the measurement. I would do the measurement myself. I would show the levels, and if those levels were below actionable adverse effect levels, there you go. That's what I try to do by proxy with all this data that is freely available on a map that is way more integrated than it has any right to be. Most government websites are not that robust. So I got to give it to the EPA, actually, for, in the last week, changing their website from something that was just a series of paragraphs into a fully interactive data set. I don't see that very often. Alex with the $9.99. Kyle, love your channels. Wish media would invite science communicators regularly. Science with the 10. I mean, I'm not going to be on Fox News mostly because I don't have a PhD or most mainstream media. They go directly to, you know, the University of such and such, and they talk to the leading toxicologist or whatever. And that's honestly what they should do. The problem is that a lot of those people aren't very good at communicating. That's one of the big reasons 3 Mile Island was blown so out of proportion, is that they had people from the company and like engineers deliver technical information to the public, and they totally messed it up and made it sound way worse. So I probably won't be on. Although I will say, you can still find video of this, and I won't say what it is. Let's see if you can find it. My first TV appearance ever was on Fox and Friends on Fox News. It was a long time, almost 10 years ago. Justin Nugent with the 5. Kyle, with the natural aquifers dilute, strain the chemicals out of the water or the water table in the surrounding area? If they make it that far down, I think that's an open question. And anytime you put... if there's chemicals in the water, every time they encounter a larger volume of water, they're going to dilute significantly. Ethan McIntyre with the 10. As someone who's lived in northern Pennsylvania, acid mine drainage in Ohio and PA from abandoned coal mines is a much, much bigger problem, and they're just starting to do something about it after half a century, says Ethan. Yes, what you're saying, when I see on Reddit, for example, like, this is the worst disaster ecologically for America ever. There are so many other things you can point to that are so much worse that make that kind of statement actually misinformation. And that's why I do podcasts like this. William with the 5. Oh, so many. Guys, it's okay. You don't need to. Giant Eagle pulled their water off shelves. EPA can lie, since if they get sued, it's your tax dollars. Corporations, though, that's profits. Sus. Giant Eagle pulled their water off the shelves? That's more marketing than... How would that even... Are you saying... Because you're claiming that they were bottling water near the area and now they're not selling them, and that's suspicious? Is it? Isn't that more marketing than anything? People aren't going to want to buy this, and it's going to take a huge dip because we're from Ohio, and so we'll pull it from the shelves or whatever until people forget about it, and it's never been dangerous because we don't even bottle from that area, and we're 100 miles away from anything that could even be considered contaminated. I mean, that makes more sense as a marketing thing than a conspiracy theory, don't you think? Sloan with the 50. It surprises me how many people only take a surface level look at this. Multiple podcasts I watch start talking about it, but they haven't looked into it because Big Cloud's scary government cover-up, ? Had a few friends I had to explain this to. I mean, you don't have to trust me. We're We're taking the information directly from instruments in the hands of people who have spent their entire lives just working for public health. And if you can't believe that, that leads me to believe you won't believe anything, any sort of data. And if you won't believe any sort of data, then you're not interested in the facts, in my opinion. You're interested in the emotional valence of the situation. Viewer, thank you for the 9. Clayton, thank you for the 10. Oh, thank God, Kevin's back to his normal form after having all those arms and legs. Good. Alicia, nice to see you again with the 20. Glad to catch this live. I'll reference this when explaining the science with people who think there's conspiracy happening. The dose makes the poison, whether it's vinyl chloride, water, or anything else, says Alicia with the 20. A point here, chat, just before, we're almost at our end here, but just a quick point on that. Now, if I was making a conspiracy, why would I have an option to show all of the rates that were above the limit that we're looking for? Now, again, above the reporting limit, not the health effect limit, just the reporting limit for our machinery. Why would I code in? I would make it confusing. I would just have everything all, and then I would guess that, there's much more air sampling data. Now, if I were a supervillain, which I'm not, I would make this obtuse. I wouldn't have a map. I wouldn't have, you can't select different chemicals. You can't select samples. I'd make this all results. You can't filter nothing. And then I'd make you scroll through literally hundreds of data points and make it, and have every single one of them show that nothing is wrong. Go back to your homes. Nothing. But if I say, but then I have an option saying, oh, what was everything that showed nothing? Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, well, not hundreds, but dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of readings that all say below actionable limit. That's not very supervillainy, chat. It's not. There's better ways to do a conspiracy. And many of you messaged me after who work for governments or in the government. If you've ever worked with any of these people, especially like EPA people or big government agency people, you know they're not coordinated enough to pull anything like that off. You know that just from being around them. I mean, I have people who run, I have members who run live streams like this for the government, and the politicians don't know their ass from a tea kettle. You know what I mean? Hey Kyle, cheers from Brazil, says Paulo Ariente. Still hold your episode on the radio accident here in Brazil as one of my favorites. Thanks for the awesome work that you do, say Paulo. Gracias, Paulo. Yeah, the Goiânia incident is a really powerful episode. It came out powerful, and I'm really happy with it. So thank you. Bryce Mama with the 10. Do you think it would be good to be a good change to many PhD courses to add in a required science communication course to help train PhD candidates to inform the public for incidents like this, says Bryce. Not every PhD, but I would say if you're going to into anything public facing, like epidemiology, public health in this case, that is going to be expected as part of your job to make public reports or go to hearings or something like that, then definitely yes. But if you're getting a PhD in, electrodynamics or, something like that, probably not. You're probably going to be sitting at your computer running calculations and you'll never have to talk to anybody, which sounds great. But anything forward-facing that you can expect to be in front of the public at some time, I would absolutely do that. And guess who would teach that course? Me. Denzer Foster with the 10. The science needs to be balanced by rationality. Peer review is taken as a robust thing when the reality is much less rigorous than what people assume. Let the evidence lead where it will, says Denzer Foster. I disagree. Let's take the case that we're talking about. And again, very conspiratorial, Denzer, and I get it. But what... What is the incentive What is the actual incentive for this, for a report, a 300-page report like this, to say 0.5 parts per million instead of 300,000, or any of these numbers being different, or any of this being in any way altered? Like, what's the point? When you're talking about rationality, Denzer, you're retrofitting the assumption that we knew the train was going to derail, and we knew the chemicals would eventually spill out into the public, and so we would have to change these numbers so that they don't actually show anything dangerous. Go back inside, everything's fine. But rationally speaking, how many more things have to be true for this to all work out in a conspiratorial way? How many more assumptions do we have to make? How many additional things, very unlikely things, need to happen? What is the most likely answer to this? In my opinion, there is very little incentive for a toxicology report done by multiple agencies to say a certain number or not in reference to some accident that may never happen. You know what I mean? Anyway, hey Kyle, I just saw Vice make a very bad informed video about this. Yeah, I would guess that, see, there's a difference between doing something like this, which is looking at the data yourself and seeing if it's bad or not, and focusing on the human story, which Vice probably did. I haven't seen what you're talking about. But if Vice is going to East Palestine and interviewing people, and all the people are saying, you know, I'm scared that I'm going to be poisoned, and I had to move, and no one wants to buy my products, and all that stuff, all of that is true and can be true. It's all valid. This can all be equally valid. People are scared. People may have their livelihoods affected because of the public's perception of this accident. People could lose their jobs, their livelihoods. They could get mental health issues. They could develop anxiety, depression. All of that is true. I would deny zero of it. Would I say it is directly because of chemicals in the air and water? No. It is from a perception of their toxicity in their city, which is uninformed. But it's still valid. That's all. Life is complicated, Chet. But you know what's not complicated? Joining the facility. If you want a lot more science like this, if you want to join us for our nerdy discussions live while we're video gaming or otherwise, that's patreon.com/Kyle Hill. I hope this was helpful. This was my attempt to be as unbiased as possible using actual data in real time. Those equations, I used different data points on Wolfram Alpha just then than I did when I was preparing this episode. I could have hit enter and it could have said something else. But I go where the data takes me. So chat, if you want to go where the data takes you, head over to the facility. We got a lot of fun stuff coming up. I don't know how I'm feeling. I might game after this, or maybe tomorrow. But by the end of the month, we'll have a new Half-Life history about another nuclear accident of interest. It has to do with orphan sources. We'll have so much coming up, chat. This year, we're focusing more on Half-Life histories and getting them out. Oh, and a big thing. A lot of people were saying how much they love the Chernobyl videos. There will be the last of the Chernobyl videos coming out. And then guess what, chat? Guess what? I am probably a day or two away from booking my tickets to Japan for a 10-day excursion to Fukushima. Inside of the Fukushima exclusion zone and, fingers crossed, inside of the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. I will be going there with one of my Kevins to do exactly what we did at Chernobyl. Create a series of great stories. So if you like the Chernobyl series, 3 videos are up on the channel in a playlist called Expedition Chernobyl. Watch those in anticipation, but yeah, I could be going to Fukushima in the next couple of weeks. And then from there, we'll create a series of stories in video form, like the Chernobyl series. I'll probably call it Expedition Fukushima. And yeah, we'll add to the Half-Life history legacy. I want to do the big 3, chat. I want to go... So I've been to Chernobyl. Looks like I'm going to Fukushima. And then after that, we'll go to 3 Mile Island. The least dangerous of the 3. In fact, it's not dangerous at 3 Mile Island at all. But yeah, that'd be pretty amazing. So I'm very, very excited. Chat, if you're excited about science, I would recommend joining the facility. Our Discord, our private Discord members say it is one of the best communities they've ever been in. I want you there. I want to talk about science with you there. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Going into the weekend, all my friends overseas, enjoy the rest of your weekend, chat. Wherever I see you, next live stream over on the Kyle Hill Gaming channel where we science and game in real time. Next Half-Life Histories video. Be nice to each other, because this is all we got. Bye. So smooth, huh, Kevin?